Covering the camera settings 1 menu item in the last tutorial, we are now getting to the camera settings 2 menu item, which mainly deals with features and functions for cinematography. Just as a reminder before we dive into the A7III's massive menu system again, the icons for the respective menu item, the category headers and position indicators will facilitate orientation and will show you at any time where we are in the menu system as we run through the pages. The camera settings 2 menu item is represented by the purple camera 2 icon in the menu bar. There are 9 pages, with each one offering up to 6 features, functions or submenus. We start with page 1, where the category header says Movie 1 and which offers 6 items. The first item is exposure mode. What you already know from the mode dial on the top of the camera, which lets you invoke manual mode, shutter or aperture priority, or program mode for shooting still images. This is the equivalent when shooting videos. It's grayed out unless the mode dial is set to movie mode. Set this to manual mode if you want to have full control when recording videos. The second feature is S&Q exposure mode, or slow and quick exposure mode. What we just learned for movie mode, this is the equivalent for shooting fast or slow motion or slow and quick video, as Sony calls it. This as well is grayed out unless the mode dial is set to S&Q, and here again set this to manual mode if you want to have full control when recording fast or slow motion videos. The third item is file format. This one lets you select which of the 3 movie formats, AVC HD, XAVC SHD or 4K to use. Each choice of movie format comes with an array of choices for frame rate and bitrate, which are different for NTSC or PAL. Thus, it's difficult to give you a recommendation for this one, but generally speaking, you should go for XAVC S4K if you want to achieve the best quality your camera offers, and XAVC SHD if a still decent quality is sufficient and you want to keep file sizes smaller. XAVC-S is basically an H.264 codec, which is superior to AVC HD, which is why I would avoid the latter, unless quality doesn't matter and all would count is small file sizes. The fourth feature on this page is record setting. This lets you choose the frame rate and bitrate for the file format setting we've just covered. If you have chosen XAVC S4K and want to get the best possible quality out of your camera, you should choose 24p at 100 megabits per second. This setting gives you a bitrate of 4.17 megabits per second per frame, which is more than a 3.33 megabits per second per frame when choosing 30p at 100 megabits per second. If you have pre-specified XAVC SHD as the file format to go for before, which is 1080p, also called Full HD, you have more choices than with 4K. Here as well, I would go for the one with the highest bitrate per frame, which is 24p at 50 megabits per second. However, if you record fast-moving subjects or you plan for several pan shots in your movie, then of course higher frame rates than 24p are adequate. And here XAVC SHD gives you more choice than XAVC S4K. For XAVC SHD, the camera also offers 60p and 120p frame rates. But unlike the S&Q mode, to which we will get in a bit, this 60p and 120p footage has to be transcoded to your base frame rate of 24p or 30p if you want to have slow motion. On the other side, choosing either 60p at 50 megabits per second or 120p at 100 megabits per second provides you with better quality than using the quick and dirty S&Q mode for slow motion. The fifth item on this page is S&Q settings. This one lets you specify the frame rate when shooting fast or slow motion videos, or as Sony calls it, slow and quick video. As just mentioned when talking about the previous menu item, doing slow motion with this feature doesn't require you to transcode the footage after recording, but comes at a lower quality. Selecting S&Q settings takes you to a submenu with 2 items: record settings and frame rate. If you choose a frame rate higher than the record setting, you get slow motion. If you choose a frame rate lower than record setting, you get fast motion, also called time-lapse. The slowest slow motion you can get is at a record setting of 24p and a frame rate of 120 frames per second, which equals 5 times slow motion. And as the camera shows you, this is done at only 12 megabits per second as compared to 100 megabits per second when doing slow motion via the record setting in normal movie mode as mentioned before. For time lapses, the S&Q exposure mode is your only option. And here the S&Q settings item lets you choose 1 frame per second as the maximum interval between each exposure, which equates to a maximum of 60 times quick motion when the record setting is set to 60p. To conclude this feature, according to a recent press release by Sony, the April 2019 firmware update for the a7 III will come with expanded time-lapse capabilities. The last feature on this page is proxy recording. This feature will record 2 video clips to the memory card, one high quality and one extremely low quality. This makes sense if you want to record in XAVC 4K, but your video editing system isn't powerful enough to enable smooth editing of that footage. Then you can use the low quality proxy footage for smoother editing, but render the finalized video with the high quality XAVC 4K footage. Furthermore, you can also use the low quality footage for on-the-fly upload to your smartphone and from there for upload to social media. The proxy files are recorded in XAVC at 720p resolution and a bitrate of 9 megabits per second. Let's switch to page 2, where the category header says Movie 2 and which offers 6 items. The first item on this page is AF drive speed. With this one you can set the autofocus speed for the movie mode. Setting it to slow, the AF doesn't call much attention to itself. Setting it to fast, the AF focuses faster, but it might be visually distracting. If you record 2 subjects located in different distances to the camera and you want to move focus from one to the other while recording, which is best done by tapping on the respective subject on the touch screen of the camera, then having set AF drive speed to slow gives you a nice cinematic focus shift. Filmmakers call this rack focus. For most other situations, I have it set to fast. Next on the page is AF track sensitivity. With this feature, you can tell the camera how aggressive it should be in tracking moving subjects when in movie mode. So what's the difference between AF drive speed and AF track sensitivity? AF drive speed specifies how fast the autofocus will transition from one focus point to another. AF track sensitivity controls how long the camera waits before it starts refocusing. For example, if something moves in front of your subject. Mine is set to responsive unless I want to track a certain subject in a group of subjects. The next feature is auto slow shutter. When in movie mode, and if you have chosen aperture mode as the movie exposure mode, this feature gives the camera the permission to use shutter speeds of slower than 1/30th of a second if the light level is low and the preset ISO isn't sufficient. I keep it set to on just in case, but will probably never need it as I always shoot movies in manual exposure mode. The next feature, audio recording, is pretty straightforward. If you want to record your video with audio, then choose on. Related to this feature is the next one on the page, audio record level. This opens a screen where you can set audio levels for an external microphone. It's only available if the modal is set to movie. For faster access while recording, one should assign this feature to a custom button or the functions menu. Setting too high a value, the camera will still automatically try to limit the audio level if it detects high volume levels. Nevertheless, for best audio quality, one should try to find an adequate level. And as a rule of thumb, if you have a high quality external microphone, choose the camera's level as low as possible and control the output gain on your microphone, and do it the other way around if you have a low quality external microphone. Next feature is related to the previous two. With audio level display, you tell the camera to show the audio levels on your LCD display or your monitor during recording. I keep it on. If you don't see it, despite being enabled, press the disp button until you get a view which shows it. Let's get to page 3, where the category header says Movie 3 and which offers 6 items. The first feature on this page is audio out timing. It lets you delay the audio signal, which comes through the headphone jack, by just a little to match the delay of the video signal that occurs because the latter has to go through the camera's video processor first. Since that delay is so little, there's actually only one real application where this makes sense. If you're shooting a music video and your actor or actress is lip syncing to a pre-recorded track, set this feature to lip sync. In all other cases, set it to live, which is the default setting anyway. The next function, wind noise reduction, lets you reduce wind noise when set to on. However, since it cuts out the lower frequencies where wind noise typically occurs, it also cuts out part of the basses, which makes the recorded audio sound weird. The better option is always to use a dead cat or another type of windshield with your external microphone, and if necessary, apply a high frequency boost on your microphone to enhance clarity and detail in your recording. This, at least, is how I do it, which is why I keep the wind noise reduction in the camera set to off. The third feature, Marker Display, lets you enable or disable video compositional aids as specified by the next feature on this page. In other words, to apply the various video compositional aids in the feature marker settings, you first have to set Marker Display to on. Then open the Marker Settings submenu to display overlays for the center position, frame guides for various aspects, safety zones, and/or a guide frame, which is similar to the rule of thirds grid. The next feature, Video Light Mode, offers an array of options when selected. The camera is able to communicate with certain accessory video lights mounted to the hot shoe of the camera. This feature lets you determine when such a video light will illuminate. There are 4 options. With Power Link enabled, the video light shines as long as the camera is turned on. With Rec Link enabled, the video light is only working while actually recording a video. Rec Link and Standby is similar to Power Link, except that the light dims when you are not recording. And with Auto enabled, the video light only illuminates if the camera thinks it's too dark to shoot without light. The last feature on this page is Movie with Shutter. There is that dedicated red dotted movie button next to the electronic viewfinder that you already know. However, the camera offers an additional option to start and stop recording when in movie mode. And this is by pressing the shutter release button. To invoke this function, just set Movie with Shutter to on. Mine is set to on because I find it ergonomically more convenient. Let's switch to page 4, where the category header says Shutter Steady Shot and which offers 6 items. The first feature on this page is silent shooting. If this is set to on, the camera will not make any mechanical shutter noise when shooting stills. This comes in handy if you are shooting in an environment where you don't want to call attention to yourself. However, silent shooting, some call it electronic shutter, comes with a few disadvantages. For example, there's more of a rolling shutter issue when shooting fast-moving subjects or quick pans with silent shooting as compared to mechanical shutter. And when shooting RAWs, the camera automatically switches from 14 to 12-bit, to just name a few. This is the reason why I use mechanical shutter most of the time, which means silent shooting is set to off. Some people believe they can extend shutter life by using silent shooting, but using silent shooting for longer periods shortens the life expectancy of your sensor. If you think replacing a mechanical shutter on a digital camera is expensive, you don't want to know what it will cost to replace a sensor. The next feature is E-front curtain shutter. This feature is only available with silent shooting set to off, i.e. in combination with mechanical shutter. However, what it actually does requires a long explanation, which would go beyond the scope of this video. I will do a separate video just on this one. For the time being, it's sufficient to know that E-front curtain shutter is the best way to reduce wear and tear on the mechanical shutter. Therefore, you should set it to on unless you experience occasional overexposures with non-native lenses or banding when using high-speed sync with third-party flashes. The next feature is release without lens. Since I have always a lens attached to my camera just to avoid dust entering the body and covering the sensor, having this feature enabled doesn't make sense to me, which is why I always keep it disabled. The next feature, release without card, is similar to the previous one. If there's no memory card inserted into the camera, releasing the shutter makes no sense, which is why I keep this disabled as well. The next feature on this page does make much more sense. Steady shot is Sony's name for image stabilization. Since the stabilization happens on the sensor in the camera's body, it's also called in-body image stabilization or just IBIS. Mine is always kept on in still image and movie mode unless my camera is mounted to a rock-solid tripod. According to Sony, the IBIS in the a7 III provides you with the ability to shoot handheld at shutter speeds up to 5 stops slower. The last feature on this page, Steady Shot Settings, allows for optimal steady shot with lenses that don't communicate their focal length to the camera. In the Steady Shot Settings submenu, set Steady Shot Adjust to Auto. Attaching a non-native E-mount lens to the camera, Steady Shot Adjust automatically switches to manual. If not, do so manually and then specify the focal length of your lens by the Steady Shot Focal Length function in the same submenu. Let's get to page 5, where the category header says zoom and which offers only 3 items. The first item on this page is zoom, which is only available in movie mode and when shooting JPEGs in still image mode. It digitally zooms in, thereby cropping away valuable pixels, and then upsizes it to 24 megapixels. Depending on the chosen JPEG image size and zoom setting, you can achieve a zoom factor of up to 8 times in still image mode and up to 4 times in movie mode. Since it reduces image quality, I never use it in still image mode. However, in movie mode it makes sense under certain circumstances. The best video quality you can get out of the A7 III is by using the full resolution of the sensor. The 4K video you get doing it this way is derived by oversampling from the full 6K of the sensor without pixel binning. In other words, the camera records 2.4 times the information of what's needed for 4K. In this case, you will always sacrifice video quality using the digital zoom because it's throwing away pixels by cropping in. However, if you shoot your videos in Super 35mm mode anyway, then the digital zoom can make sense. Super 35mm uses a smaller portion of your full frame sensor, which is about the size of an APS-C sensor, which means the Super 35mm mode throws away pixels anyway. The digital zoom is basically throwing away the same pixels when zooming in, which is why you can achieve zoom factors of up to 2 times when shooting HD videos without degradation, and zoom factors of up to 1.5 times without degradation when shooting 4K videos. Consequently, this function can provide a penalty-free and smooth zoom while recording, which is a much cheaper way for zooming than doing it with a cinema lens and a focus engine. However, the prerequisite for the just mentioned lossless zooming is that you set your zoom setting, which is the next feature we're gonna get to in just a moment, to clear image zoom. Which takes us to exactly this feature. Zoom setting opens a submenu. There you have the choice between optical zoom only, clear image zoom, and digital zoom. The first option disables the digital zoom. The second option is exactly what I've just mentioned, the option which provides you with lossless zooming when shooting videos in Super 35mm mode. The last option will result in degradation if you zoom in more than the mentioned zoom factors of 1.5 times with 4K and 2 times with HD videos. The last feature on this page is Zoom Ring Rotate. It's only active when a power zoom lens is attached to the camera. Then you can change whether the lens zooms in or out when you rotate the zoom ring. That's up to your liking. Let's get to page 6 now, where the category header says Display Auto Review 1 and which offers 6 items. The first feature is Disp button. It lets you determine which of several information screens to cycle through on the monitor and in the electronic viewfinder each time you press the Disp button. You can specify this for the monitor and the EVF independently and then confirm your selection by hitting Enter. Only those information screens will be displayed for which you have ticked the boxes. Which ones you want to have displayed is up to you. I have ticked all but the first one. However, if you are a photography newbie, the first one might be helpful for you. You might be wondering why I also tick the box for monitor off. Well, if you are out in a field in the middle of nowhere in complete darkness to shoot a starry sky, you don't want to be blinded by all those white icons on a monitor. And if you do a time-lapse where the camera might be taking hundreds of images over several hours, the monitor off screen saves battery power. What all the info screens are good for would go beyond the scope of this video, which is why I will dedicate separate videos to them in the future. The second feature on this page is Finder Monitor. It allows you to specify whether you let the camera switch between the monitor and the EVF automatically. Having it set to Monitor Manual, only the LCD monitor displays the camera's menu and what the sensor actually sees. Having it set to Viewfinder, only the EVF displays these things and only if something is close to the eye sensor located above the eyepiece, typically your own eye. While this could be a way to save battery, it's not convenient if you switch from monitor to EVF and back again very frequently. This is why I keep this at auto all the time. And if I want to save power, I do it by selecting monitor off via the Disp button as explained before. The next feature, Zebra Setting, is a professional video feature which is nowadays found in more and more hybrid cameras. It lets you display ahead of time what's going to blow out. For example, on a bright sunny day, the multi-segment metering mode will almost always suggest an exposure where the lights in your image, for example the white clouds in the sky, will be clipped, which means no details in the clouds will be captured. To avoid this in still image mode, you set zebra display to on and expose for the highlights, which is done by changing the exposure until the zebra stripes are gone. And later in post, you recover details in the shadows by lightening them up. For more flexibility, you should shoot in RAW. In contrast to still images, videos provide very little flexibility for post-processing, and pushing shadows too much will generate all kinds of artifacts, which is why you have to find a balanced exposure before you start recording. Alternatively, you can use picture profiles like S-Log2 or 3 or hybrid log gamma, which give you more dynamic range, but have to be created in post. But this is a huge topic and way beyond the scope of this video. Anyways, getting back to the application of zebras in video mode, the values for zebra level I have accomplished the best results with so far is 100 plus for bright sunny days, 90 for overcast days, and 75 if you want to expose a Caucasian face correctly. With the next feature, grid line, you can superimpose a compositional 8 grid over your live view image. Personally, I prefer the rule of thirds grid, but sometimes it becomes disturbing while composing the image, then I switch it off. The next feature is exposure setting guide. It lets you determine whether a ribbon band should appear when you change shutter speed and f-stop. In my view, it accelerates performing these changes, which is why I always keep it on. The last feature on this page is live view display, which is only available in still image mode. It allows you to enable or disable the ability to preview how your image will look before you take the picture. This one enabled is what we actually call the live view, and which is one of the main advantages of mirrorless cameras over DSLRs. Disabling it would force your a7 III to behave like a DSLR without live view and lead your purchase of this mirrorless camera to absurdity. Let's get to page 7, where the category header says Display Auto Review 2 and which offers only 2 items. The first of these 2 features is continuous shoot length. It lets you display a vertical scale in the left edge of the frame, which graphically shows you how much longer you can continue shooting in burst mode. This might be useful for a sports photographer who frequently shoots in burst mode to monitor how much buffer is left. I keep it set to not displayed. The second and last feature on this page is auto review. If you are a guy who needs instant gratification and therefore want the camera to automatically show you the image you just took, keep it on. If you are in a situation where you don't want to get distracted by images popping up, switch it to off. I keep mine set to 10 seconds. Let's switch to page 8, where the category header says Custom Operation 1 and which offers 6 items in a number of ways to customize your camera according to your liking. The first feature on this page is Images Custom Key. It lets you assign certain useful functions to the official custom buttons as well as to some other buttons. This way, those functions are immediately accessible when in still image mode. Some of those functions are not accessible via the camera's menu system, only after assigning them to a button. As such, they expand the versatility of your camera. You can assign functions to the 4 official custom buttons, but also to the control wheel, the right, left, and down button, as well as the center button of the control wheel, the multi-selector, the AEL and AF on button, and the focus hold button, which you find on certain lenses. Each button offers up to 22 pages with up to 6 functions per page that can be assigned to it. Providing a recommendation of which function should be assigned to what button doesn't make sense because it depends on your own shooting habits. But I will do an entire video where I show how to do it and what makes sense for hybrid shooters. Just one recommendation: if in the meantime you want to play around with this feature on your own, try to assign the buttons with functions that you need immediate access to and that you won't find in the menu system or that you cannot assign to the FN menu that we're going to cover in a bit. This way you maximize the versatility of your camera. The next feature is similar to the prior one, just for movie mode. The Movies Custom Key feature lets you assign functions to the mentioned buttons that are relevant for filmmaking. Since there are functions you might need in still image and movie mode, like for example white balance or ISO, you might want a few buttons functions to be identical in both modes. Then just choose Follow Custom Image Mode. As you will realize, there is less choice of functions that are assignable to a button in movie mode as compared to still image mode. Here as well, it's up to your own shooting habits what functions you assign to the respective button, which is why I can't give you any recommendations here, but generally the same applies as with the feature before. Assign the buttons with those functions that you need immediate access to and that you won't find in the menu system or that you cannot assign to the FN menu to maximize the versatility of your camera. The next feature is Playback Custom Key. It's similar to the previous two, but lets you assign functions to only 3 custom buttons and the FN button, which take effect during playback only. Also, the number of functions you can assign to these 4 buttons is less than with the previous 2 features. Here as well, it's up to your own convenience which function you assign to what button. The next feature is also quite helpful. Function menu settings lets you change the 12 functions in the FN menu. For each of the 12 slots, you have 48 options to choose from. Unlike the functions that you can immediately access via a custom button, accessing the functions in the FN menu requires pressing a button more than once. Nevertheless, this still provides fast access to the respective functions, which is definitely faster than browsing the menu system for those functions. Which of the 48 functions you assign to the 12 slots in the FN menu depends on your own shooting habits and therefore is up to you, but it makes sense to assign functions to it that you haven't assigned to any of the custom buttons in order to maximize the versatility of your camera. I will also do a video on this one to show what functions are useful for hybrid shooters. The next feature is Dial Setup. It lets you swap the roles of the front and rear dial. Mine is set to the factory default. The next feature is similar to the previous one. AV/TV Rotate lets you change the direction you have to turn the dials when adjusting the exposure or any other parameter. Mine is set to normal. Let's get to the last page, page 9, where the category header says Custom Operation 2, and which offers 4 items. The first feature on this page is Dial EV Compensation. It lets you assign exposure compensation to either the front or rear dial. This way you can adjust exposure compensation with the front or rear dial when shooting still images in P, A, or S mode. Since the A7 III has a dedicated exposure compensation dial anyway, this feature is useless in my view, which is why I keep this set to off. The next feature makes more sense. With the Feature Movie button, you can specify whether the red dotted movie button is supposed to be always receptive to starting and stopping recording by pressing this button, or only when the camera is officially in movie mode. Since the situation might emerge while you are in still image mode that's worth recording a video of, you want to be able to react quickly by just hitting that red dotted movie button without switching to movie mode before and lose valuable time. This is why I keep this set to always. The next feature, Lock Operation Ports, allows you to lock the multi-selector, front and rear dial plus control wheel, or all of them by pressing and holding the FN button for 3 seconds. While Sony has probably implemented this feature to give us an option to avoid an accidental change of settings, the risk that you forget that you have locked it and therefore not being able to react quickly if you have to is higher in my view. This is the reason why I have it set to off. The last feature on this page and of the camera settings 2 menu item altogether is Audio Signals. It lets you enable or disable audio feedback during camera operation. Making use of more than only one sense, i.e. not only your eyesight but also your hearing, makes you faster. This is why I prefer my camera to give feedback in form of audio signals and have it set to on. Unless I'm in a situation where absolute silence is required, for example when shooting animals in the wilderness. Now that you have gotten an overview of all the features, functions and settings of the camera settings 2 menu item, make sure you don't miss the next tutorial on the features, functions and settings of the network menu item. Just hit that subscribe button and bell icon next to it and you will be notified. And if this tutorial was helpful for you, I would very much appreciate getting your thumbs up.